you have a nickname growing up? I know I did. My name was lupus, a disease. I didn't feel so good about that. Did you have a nickname? Well, thankfully, my nickname changed a little bit going through life. And so it changed from lupus to, in high school, I got the name Fruit Loops, which was kind of an extension of fruit of lupus, but at least it took the sting out of it. And then in college, I became just straight up fruit. And I like that. That was better. So tonight, I want to try to ask you to go on a journey with me, to look at our names and look at our stories and how our names and our stories chart the course of our lives, and how oftentimes the culture gets the best of us. And when I say culture, I mean exactly that. When I was a little bit younger, I was at a monastery called Mepkin Abbey, and I went there to get away and to be quiet. And I went there and I met with the guy, his name was Father Christian. And the first time he met me, he actually found out about my name. He found out that I was a Milner, and he said, "Oh, Milner, hat maker." And I didn't know anything about that until that moment. So this gentleman named me in that moment and blessed me as a person that was a hat maker. One day I was with Father Christian at Mepkin Abbey, and he said to me, "Peter, your biggest challenge is going to be against the culture." And so we have this challenge with our stories. We have the tendency to take our culture and put the culture onto our own story. But I think there is an antidote to that. And the antidote comes in the form of three things that I want to share with you tonight as ways to walk through and get through the challenges that the culture puts on us. The first thing is to write stuff down. Simple as that. When I moved out to Portland, Oregon with my ex-wife, we went out there in exploration of the Wild West, but also for me to be a chaplain. I had gone to seminary at Duke Divinity School, and I felt like I needed to be a better pastor. I didn't know what that looked like, but we went to Portland. And when we went there, I found out that we were pregnant. And I went to my mentor the next day when I found that out, and I said, "Fred, oh my gosh, I am very nervous. I don't know what to do." And he said, "Well, Peter, you can't out Jesus. You just need to write stuff down." And so I always say that to my friends because in being a dad, sometimes you try to be everything to that child. I'm thankful that one of my children is here tonight and has been an amazing companion for the journey. But we'll talk about companionship later. But for now, I want to try to convince you that writing down what's on your heart is really helpful to breaking through what the culture is trying to teach you. Because ultimately, we have to wrestle with our story. What is our story? Where do we come from? Where are we going? And our name oftentimes will give us away. So when we were in Portland, Fred said, "You need to write things down, Peter." And so what happened was I took a journey in writing things down. And I journaled every day about my fears about my daughter being born. She was then born and everything was okay. And the journaling helped. So I would encourage you to write down not just your visions, but your fears. Another thing that happens in our life that I've found in my life is on this journey of life, we have companions. And they can be as deep as children, but they can also be in very strange forms. Just the other day, I was at McDonald's, I have to say, I was getting a Big Mac, and I needed to get more napkins. And I don't know if any of you guys have had this struggle, but when I was in McDonald's, I went over to the dispenser and I started pulling down the napkins, and I pulled one down and it came out. The second one kind of ripped a little bit. And this elderly gentleman came up to me and said, "Hey, let me show you an easier way." And I thought, well, gosh, who is this guy? This 85-year-old man is telling me how to do this. I'm like, well, I don't know about this. And so he came over. I said, sure. He grabs the napkin dispenser and pulls the right side of the napkin dispenser off, grabs a stack of 50 napkins and hands them to me. I'm like, oh my gosh, you solved the biggest problem of the last 10 years of my life. Or like, what about printer cartridges? They've got these numbers, number 67, and I haven't gotten a printer cartridge until yesterday because I just finally got out to the store and got me a printer cartridge. We have these companions that come along in our life, and those companions help us to shape our stories. And they can be as small as a man at McDonald's or as large as our children. So in 2019, I experienced a little bit of a hiccup in my journey. And that hiccup is a part of the third section of what I think is important to get over what the culture wants to impress upon us. The culture wants us to think that we can do it on our own. You ever had that feeling? You can do it on your own? How's that worked out? I've struggled, and I really struggled mightily when I got cancer in 2019. And with that, I realized that I couldn't raise my child. I had to live my life in a hospital bed. I had to live my life connected to a chemotherapy bag, pumping in Folfox and oxaliplatin into my body every day. And I had to give up the idea of raising my child. But you know what? That story, that suffering was the best thing that's ever happened to me. Because it taught me a really important lesson. What's that lesson? Well, I'm afraid to tell you it's that we have to heal from the inside out. And we don't want to, because the culture wants us to build everything on top. They want us to look good. They want us to put the makeup on. They want us to look beautiful, run out on the court and have everybody cheer. And that's great. I love that. I did that in college. I was a basketball player. They yelled for me. It was great. But there's something else that we need to learn to make life a little bit easier, like getting napkins out of a dispenser. A little bit easier. And that is to heal from the inside out. I learned that through cancer. I got infected during cancer, and they had to do what's called debridement. And when you debride a wound, you take that wound and you remove all the dead skin. And it hurts. Oh boy, it hurts. It's horrible. And I had to go to this special clinic in Raleigh over on Blue Ridge Road. And I don't like driving by that clinic because I had to be reminded every time of being debrided of my dead skin. But it healed me from the inside out. And then I had to get this thing called hyperbaric oxygen to heal the wound. And I had to go underneath what they do is they take you and they put you underneath the water, so to speak. And for an hour and a half, you are underneath the water, and they take you down like you're deep sea diving. And you heal. But you have to get the cells deep in your body that will bring the blood to them to then heal you from the inside out. So why am I telling you all this? Well, it's because I believe our stories matter. I believe our names matter, because they always have. There's this unbelievable story in the Bible that talks about how there's this man banging his head against the walls. The first thing that God does is comes to him. You know what he asks him? What's your name? What's your name? Same thing happened to Moses. Moses went to God and said, how am I going to talk to Pharaoh? And Moses said, tell him I am sent you. I am sent you. Our stories matter because our names matter, and our names have to be reorganized. And our culture has organized them in a way that kills us. It literally kills us. And it took cancer for me to realize that I didn't have to fake it until I made it. I mean, here I am on this stage, and I'm not faking it. This is real. So a third thing I think we need to do after we write down our story, after we have a companion that helps us get the napkins out of the dispenser better, is we have to share our suffering. And I think that for me has come through a really hard story that happened to me when I was a child. I had two wonderful brothers that named me Lupus because perhaps they were jealous. I don't know. I was the youngest. I don't know what was going through their mind. But when I was young, my mother, not my wife, would take me into the bushes and hide with me and breastfeed me because my brothers were looking for her. They wanted her time. They wanted her attention. Who could blame them? They want mother's love. I would go into the bushes with my mom, and so I felt so ashamed of myself for years. And so I lived in that shame. I lived in that place of hiding. Have you ever done that? Live in a place of hiding? Not because of anything you did, just because who you were, just because you're sitting there with your mother in a bush on Wesleyan Lane in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. It's crazy, but it happened. And we all have things we go through that make us feel ashamed. So we have to get out a piece of paper and write it down. And we have to have companions that come alongside of us and say, hey, I see you. I see you, buddy. I see you going through a hard time. I had this experience with cancer because when I was sick, I had a friend that flew out 3 times to see me. And that was incredible. He would do that. That's just amazing. Have you ever been moved to companion somebody? I know you have. I know you have. Because you've been renamed. You have been renamed. You're not just Lupus. You're so much more than that. You're beautiful. You came here tonight. I get to speak to you. This is a blessing. And we all have a story. And we are a part of it. And the culture wants to tell us that we have a story of when we had no story. That's what it wants to convince us of. But you know what? We have a story. The man that taught me that line, Stanley Hauerwas, famous ethicist from Duke University, was walking down we were running together as we were, I was getting ready to go to Portland. And he said, Peter, and he's got this funny voice. He's the son of a bricklayer. He's got this funny, raspy voice. He said, Peter, it doesn't matter whether you go to Portland or stay here in Chapel Hill. God's going to be with you wherever you go. And it's true. But I had to live that out. I had to experience that. And I had to start to learn how to retell my story. Because my story was not done. We all have a story that's not done. At all. I thought I was done when I got cancer. I thought I was done when I was just ashamed of myself, but I'm not. I'm here to talk about it because I'm becoming fully alive. I'm embracing my story. I'm sharing my story. And you can do that, writing it down, looking for companions. And then you can have the courage to share your suffering because there's other people suffering out there. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great night.